I'm excited to share with you about my third home birth. My birth with Scout was unlike my other two births completely, and if you haven't already, please watch my first video on my home birthing experiences with Elvis and Sandy called My Babies Were Born at Home, Here's the Story. I'll put a link in the description box below to that video. So my labor with Scout was much shorter than my labors with Elvis and Sandy. This was my third home birth, and all of my home birth experiences were amazing, and I'm so grateful for the experiences I had and for the experienced midwives that I had. I talk a lot more about home birth and why I chose home birthing in my first video, so please check that out if you have questions about that. But for this one in particular, I just want to talk about my birth with Scout and how special and totally different it was than my other two. All of them were special in their own way, and I'm grateful for all of them, but I'm especially ecstatic about how this birth went. It literally went exactly how I wanted it to go, and I kind of felt like I told my body what to do and when. It really felt like I was deciding when each step of my labor and birth was happening. It really felt that way for me, and I felt really empowered through that birth, so much so that I was like laughing through this entire experience and smiling, and it was such a joy. So I'm going to share with you the details, and I also want to share a little bit about what I think helped this experience be a little bit different. The number one reason why I was extra thankful for this birth is because it was a lot shorter. My birth with Elvis and Sandy were about 26 hours and 24 hours long from start to finish, from first contraction to the end. My birth with Scout, start to finish, from first contraction to the end, was 8 hours long. And that was like a dream for me. A few days before I gave birth, my neighbors, who are licensed in this therapy technique, which I will totally butcher if I try to explain it properly, and I don't even know what the technical term is, they did this thing called tapping on me. So they did this 2-hour therapy session with me. We had gotten in this conversation like a couple weeks prior about Heather, what she does for work, and how she does therapy to help dig into the subconscious mind and heal trauma from the past. So that's like partly what it is. And then she also, in this conversation, she was talking to me about pain and how pain is all in the mind. Everything that we feel, it's because our mind tells it to do, that the body only does what the mind tells it to do. And then I just kind of was like, hold up a second, wait, I'm about to give birth. Do you really think that like the pain in labor is a mental thing that's all in your head? And I know that some women totally experience these euphoric, blissful, no pain labors. I even did like hypnobirthing and hypnobabies classes and everything when I was pregnant with Elvis, my first. But I distinctly remember in the middle of my labor trying to listen to the woman on the tape, to think of the contractions as pressures and that it's not actually pain and all that. My mind just wouldn't go there, and I actually said out loud, this hypnobirthing is bullshit, like something like that, because I just felt like it just didn't work at all, when really I think now that I just wouldn't let my mind go there, and there was something subconsciously in my mind that was like blocking that from happening. So my neighbor said absolutely, pain in labor has so much to do with the mind. And then I ended up asking her like, well, would you do one of these therapy sessions on me? Do you think it would be helpful? I love so much of my first two births, but I will be the first one to say that I was in a lot of pain in the first two labors, like nothing else I could ever describe. But of course, that end result of bringing your baby up into your arms, like, it is the most euphoric moments, hands down the most euphoric moments of my life, and made it all so worth it. I wish I had Heather here to kind of explain what tapping was. You know what, I should actually go get her to explain that. Yeah, here we go. That's fine. Alright, so this is my neighbor Heather, who's the one who did this tapping with me, and I was just butchering the explanation, so I figured why not better than let her explain it herself, because when you explained it to me, it just sounded a lot better.
Okay, so some of you may have heard of something called EFT, or tapping. And so what I do is a form of EFT and tapping, but it's called faster EFT. Faster. EFT deals in trapped emotions in the body. Faster EFT deals with the brain-body connection. Nothing can happen in your body, nothing, without your brain telling it that it's okay. Even though birth is a natural, normal process, the chemicals and the sensations have to go through the brain. So it tells your uterus to contract. With faster EFT, what we do is we help that mind-body connection in giving you control over it. And you get to decide what you want. So for instance, you wanted to be in control. You wanted it to be shorter than your other ones. I
literally got it exactly what I wanted. Like,
most of the time what we're motivated by is what we don't want. We'll say, well, I don't want it to be long, I don't want it to hurt, I don't want this.
Yeah.
And even if we can get ourselves to say, where people would like, oh, positive affirmations or speaking in the positive, which is good, but you have to remove the negative.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're just gonna bounce. You're gonna say, I'm gonna have a short, pain-free, wonderful birth, and that little voice inside your head is gonna be like, but do you remember the last two?
Yeah, yeah.
That's not true.
Yeah, yeah. It's like in the subconscious that you're getting into, right?
Yes.
And what
absolutely.
does EFT mean?
Emotional freedom technique.
Okay, okay.
But we do emotionally focused transformation. What we did with you was we sat down and we talked through what you wanted, but also what your other experiences were like.
Right.
Fear is a powerful, powerful motivator. And so if we're afraid of something and we're tensed and we're stressed, the body will respond to that in a protective way. It will say, oh, okay, clench up. It's like a primal response, you know? Everything that we do, me moving my hands like this, me speaking, eating, everything is done through neural pathways, connections. It's a skill. You have to know how to do it. So even with eating, though it's something we need for our bodies, we, from little babies, learn how to eat. First by watching, then by, you know, mistake and whatever like that, but then we eventually get it. But also, you're influenced by your culture. So for instance, if you grew up in China or Japan, you may learn to use chopsticks as a very little one rather than a spoon or a fork. Right. You may not be adept at chopsticks when you're 4 if you grow up here. That does have an effect on us as well, clearly, of how we learn our skills. So what we learn from our parents, what we learn from our environment is really vital, but it doesn't have to be the end-all be-all, because we can change it.
So that's why you went and she went and asked me what my first experiences were of learning what birth was supposed to be like.
So let's take that example exactly. So let's say your first example is you hear your birth story. And I don't think this is your personal birth story, but it is many. I labored and toiled, and it was so painful, and it was horrible, and I pushed and So as a little person, you're like, oh, okay. Before I knew what I do now, I told these stories to my kids because I had those births, because I didn't do this before.
And I've told many people, like, I loved my home birth experience, but holy crap, it hurt like hell. Like, so much. Right.
And so, because that's your experience and it's real to you. So you hear this birth story, it's your first thing, you're a little girl, and you're like, oh my gosh. And you immediately think labor equals pain. You linked those two things together.
And long.
And long and arduous. So there's a particular part of your brain called the reticular activating system, which means it will look for what you recognize and know. So let's say you're in the market for a new car, you want to buy a blue Jeep, or, you know, and now everywhere you look, you see blue Jeeps. You're like, did seriously everyone else go out and buy a blue Jeep this week?
Totally.
So that is, blame that on your reticular activating system. What you're focused on, you look for the most. So if you're looking for stories where to confirm your belief that birth is painful, you will find that. Now, fear is the more powerful motivator. So if you're saying, no, I want to find good stories, someone tell me a good story, but in the back of your mind going, yeah, but that was for you and not me, and not most people. That becomes the truth for you, is that it's still, you're reinforcing that truth.
And that's what, with my first birth with Elvis, when I did the Hypno Babies, hypno birthing classes that are supposed to help you like think positively, and it's just pressure and waves and it's not actually pain. Like I said the words, but like the back of my mind, I think I didn't really believe it was gonna be that way. And that's why it didn't work for me.
Exactly. You had a neural pathway in your brain that was built that went through that experience. Now it was, the thing is it was started being built if you had that story or watched the movies or heard many stories. That's where it starts. Then you have your own personal experience, which just furthers like, yep, I knew it.
I knew it was gonna be like that.
And so that neural pathway, let's say, becomes like a highway. So what you have to do is you have to go and you scratch that neural pathway like a CD. So our body works that way. It goes to our brain, it goes down, sends the message and comes back up, right? It's cyclical. So like a CD, if you scratch it, it's gonna go, and it's gonna bump it. Scratch it enough, what happens?
It breaks.
And you can't play that again. It'll go, oh, no. No. And it won't have it. So we go back and we dismantle the neural pathway. What we do is give you something different instead. So we build the memories. Now again, memories flux. You don't have to have done it to do it. So You have we build the, what do you want it to look like?
Yeah.
Hear it, see it, feel it, smell it, whatever.
Yeah.
That becomes memory.
Yeah.
You could have a memory of something you haven't done yet. And when you get into the situation and the brain goes, okay, how do we, and it finds that, and it goes, okay, and it follows suit.
Right. Yes.
And it's amazing.
Yeah.
So it sounds, it is that easy.
Yeah.
But doing it is a little different. Now we tap, but I'll tell you right now, tapping is not the magic of it. We tap on meridian points. You know, there's 3,000 years of science of saying, you know, meridian points have some value. But that isn't what we're doing. There's a word in Faster EFT called defractionation. And what we're doing is we are scratching that CD for the most basic way of saying it.
Yeah.
Because to play that thing, you have to get in that space. And if you ever have been afraid of heights or seen anyone, you can talk about it, or sharks or whatever, and they're like, oh, there's no sharks. There's no heights. But your brain does it and does the response.
And that's what she had me do, her and her husband. Like, we're sitting all close to me, talking to me in a way to get me back into that place where I think labor is painful and that it feels really painful. And I swear it felt like I was in labor, in painful labor. Like, in those moments, I started to feel it.
So the science behind it, what we were doing is engaging those neural pathways, getting them to play, playing your CDs, so to speak.
Yeah.
And scratch, 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 scratch. And then what we do is when it's completely scratched and we cannot make you feel it anymore, when I'm like, you're gonna have an awful labor, which seems mean, but it's meaner to leave it in there if it's there, because it'll come back up.
Right.
So if I can't get you to think that anymore, then we know it's gone. Then we do something beautiful and we replace it. We give a new,
with exactly what I want it to be.
What you want.
Yeah.
And then the body knows how.
Yeah.
Because you've seen it, you've felt it, you've experienced it. Then when you're actually in it, the body will do it.
And like, my labor literally was what, like, when you asked me, like, what do you want your ideal birth to be, what would it be, like, that was what it was. I will say, I feel like we didn't spend very much time on the pushing part when we talked about it, and that was the one thing where I was like, oh god, it hurts. Like, it started hurting like really, really bad.
Right.
And I think, and then I realized later, actually we didn't spend that much time and energy on the, like, what did I want the pushing to feel like, you know what I mean?
Because we did it almost, what was it, two days before,
like
right?
2 days before I went into labor.
So in an ideal situation, we would have followed up.
Like a couple of times.
Yes.
Or 1 or 2 times,
Yes. And then make sure, okay, every bit of it would have been so real.
How interesting is that? Like, and it makes sense learning this now, when all this time I'd be like, how come when I talk labor stories with my friends, like, someone felt it completely different than the way that I felt it? So it's just so interesting how much the brain has to do with it. Our brain tells us what to feel.
Yep. We really are the creators of our world.
Yeah.
And I will have to say thank you so much, because I don't know if you said this.
I did. I say it later in the video.
All right.
Yeah.
I came over when she went into labor, and we just did some, what I would say, like, maintenance, or you know, just kind of touching up, and reminding you.
Helped, which I'll tell you, like, keep listening and you'll hear that part of the story. But yes.
Right. So I got to be a part of that. It was touching on such an incredible level for me. It made me so grateful. Honestly, I think it helped me even heal some of my stuff and my birth stories.
That's so cool.
Like, to watch you and go through that, and
I'm so glad that you were there.
Seeing you in that raw strength was like, it makes me emotional. Like,
no, we were crying talking about it together, like, days after.
Yeah, it was so special.
Like, you being that together.
Took it, and you're like, I'm having it this way.
That's why at the end I was like laughing and just like, what just happened? I literally created what I wanted.
Yes, and I was next door listening through my window, like, and then I heard the baby cry, and I was just like, oh, I'm serious.
Aww. So where can, like, someone learn more about tapping if they wanted to? Like, is there a certain website they can go to, like, from people around the world?
You can go to my website, which is MauiMindChange.com. Then you can see my personal stories. Like, I think all my videos are up there of how sick I was.
I haven't even been on that site. I didn't know you had one.
Oh, good. You can see my videos. You can see some of my husband's videos. Then from there, you can also see a lot of YouTube videos of people's testimonials.
On your site, they can click on.
Yeah, they can click on my site, and then you can even
get
connected with Faster EFT. And I mean, it's an amazing amazing things, changed my life.
That's so cool. Anyways, thank you for explaining it.
My pleasure.
Yeah, so interesting. I definitely couldn't have explained that myself. Thank you, Heather.
My pleasure.
Okay, back to the story. Alright, so after Heather explained to me what it is that she does, we decided to have me come over a few days prior to my guest date. I was excited at the thought of maybe having a labor that was a little more pleasurable, if you will. So we realized through talking that the very first thing that I learned about what labor is supposed to be like when my mom described to me what labor was like when she was in labor with me. She was in labor for over 40 hours and then she ended up having a C-section at the end of it. She tried really hard, she said to push, you know, things happened and she ended up having a C-section. Both my Aunt Jane, who, if you're watching this, I love you. My Aunt Jane and my mom both told me in explicit detail about how long and hard labor was for my mom, and that it was 40 hours and that my Aunt Jane sat outside the door waiting for my mom to give birth to me overnight into the next day, and that it was this really long thing. There's nothing wrong with that. Our labors are all different and unique. Nothing wrong with it at all. But Heather was basically helping me to tap into my subconscious on what I thought that labor had to be like and that it was supposed to be like. So she basically was saying, it's great that you think birth is this great experience and that you get your baby at the end and that it's all worth it. You want to try to have less pain and for it to be shorter. So let's tap into that. So basically she asked me, what would you like your ideal labor to look like? I thought of my midwife who had told me of a story of a woman. She was really pregnant, looking outside on her balcony, and she looked down and she was crowning. She hadn't even known that she was in labor up until that point. And when my midwife told me that, I was like, wow, that would be amazing to not have to go through all that labor and you just start pushing and bam, 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 there's your baby. So then I told Heather, I said, yeah, that would be my ideal birth, is to just look down and then my baby starts, you know, my baby's crowning. And she's like, okay, so that's your ideal birth. She's like, but is there anything negative that can happen from this version of a birth, from this birth for you? And then I thought about it and I said, well, actually, yes, something not ideal would happen if I didn't realize I was in labor and I looked down and my baby's coming out. For one, my midwife wouldn't get there in time. For two, neither would my birth photographer, my friend Cadence, who's a photographer. We were planning for her to photograph and film the birth, and if I didn't know I was in labor and I looked down and I'm about to start pushing, both of them would have missed the birth, and I definitely didn't want that to happen. So then she helped me realize, okay, that's not exactly my ideal birth. So she's like, so what is your ideal birth? I'm like, I guess my ideal birth is that I need to know I'm in labor. I need to know that it's happening, but I just want it to be a lot shorter and for it to not be painful. I want it to feel like good. And she's like, all right, so how long do you want your birth to be? And I said, I really would love it to be 6 to 8 hours. That would be so ideal. She said, okay, what do you want it to feel like so that you know you're in labor but it's not painful? I said, well, I guess I'd like it to feel like pressures and waves and feel like progression, and it feels like opening. I was skeptical. I was a little bit unsure if it was gonna work, but they were super confident, my neighbors. A few days later, I think it was 2 days later, we went to homeschool group. Okay, so now this is like the day of my labor. On our way home from homeschool group in the afternoon, we're driving home and I start to feel these like pressures and these waves coming and going, and so I'm realizing, wait, am I in labor? I think I might be in labor, but I'm not sure. It was starting to feel like those beginning feelings of what it feels like when you're at the very stages of labor, which is what I felt with my first 2 labors as well. The beginning stages were very much like just pressures and waves in the very beginning. It didn't get to like really hard and what I called painful in the first 2 labors until about halfway through. So I started to feel those feelings at the beginning and I'm like, I think I'm in labor, I think it's happening, Andrea. We're getting excited and the boys are in the car, and Elvis of course is so excited because he remembers how he got to see Sandy born and it was such a special experience for him, and he was so excited to see it again, and he was so excited to meet his new baby brother or sister. Sandy is getting excited, he's seeing Elvis excited. Andrew decides to make dinner a little bit early tonight, and in the meantime when he's out with the kids, I decided to come in here and just be by myself. I turned on the my labor playlist of this like nice soft music. I put on the Himalayan salt lamps, just like relaxed to the flow of the music, and moved my hips on the birthing ball. At that time I called my midwife and I told her that I think I'm in labor, and she wanted me to call her every hour to update her on the update so that she would know when to come. Andrew had dinner ready. The kids and Andrew were eating at the table, and I was like trying to scarf down my food because I was so hungry, like in between the pressures because they were getting stronger and stronger. It felt strong, but it didn't feel like pain this time. Like it felt like this intensity growing and growing, but it wasn't pain. It was like I welcomed it and I opened myself to it, and it opened me. During when I was having pressures at dinner, I would like get on all fours and just like swing my hips, like to just help relax into it, to help relax my birthing muscles and all that, which I had a really hard time doing with my first labors. It was really hard for me to relax those muscles because it was so painful for me. After dinner, Andrew took the boys over to our neighbor's house to watch them because we're really good friends with them, and we had already planned this, that when I was in labor, if the kids were up during the day, that they'd be able to watch the kids. So they went and watched the kids after dinner. Andrew and I walked over to the park. We walked around the baseball field and the grass. By then it was nighttime. There was no light out. It was super dark, and he was just holding my hand and walking me, and it was getting stronger and stronger. And I remember even getting on the grass on all fours again. I tend to do that a lot when I'm in labor, and calling my midwife every hour and updating her how close and far apart my contractions are. Then we get home from our walk. I was just starting to be afraid. I was letting those old thoughts creep in, like, oh no, my labor's gonna be long. It's gonna be really long, and it's gonna be really painful. And as soon as I started thinking those things, it felt more painful. It really did. And then I was kind of losing control in my mind, thinking, oh no, I'm losing this whole confidence, like it's gonna be really short and not painful thing. Heather, my neighbor, had told me that if you feel like it's just creeping back in, those thoughts that it's gonna be painful or that it's gonna be really long, like call me and I can come and help you. She said if you want me to, I would be happy to do that. I had Andrew call Heather to come over. Heather came over and she came outside. I had walked out and she walked up to me and she's like, Ellen. And I just like burst into tears. I started crying because I was like, I don't think I'm doing a good job. I'm not doing it right. I'm starting to feel like it's painful. And it's such a silly thing to say. Of course, there's no wrong way to do labor. It's not like there's a right way and a wrong way. But this like insecurity, my mind crept in because I had known so many other women whose labors were so short, and you know, even women whose labors were not painful, that I felt like I did this therapy session and yet I'm still like starting to let that pain creep in. Like, what if I'm doing it wrong? So Heather walked up and she's like, no, you got this, Ellen, you got this. Look at me. And she started doing that tapping therapy on me again, but she started like talking to me and helping me to tap out all those subconscious and conscious thoughts that labor is going to be long and painful. And she helped give me so much confidence in it and helped remind me that pain is in my mind and you are the one who decides if it's painful or not. And then she came inside and just like hugged me, and she just helped me go through a few more like pressure waves, contractions. And then after that I felt really confident. I felt so confident again. I was like back on track and it wasn't feeling painful anymore. And then she left. At that time it feels really, really strong, but I was like smiling and laughing because it didn't feel like pain to me, and I just knew that I was getting the birth that I wanted. And I felt like at that point I was sure I was gonna give birth that evening and like that night, and that it wasn't gonna last and endure until the next evening like my other two labors did, where I saw the sun come up and then I saw it go down and my baby still wasn't there. Like, that was so hard for me. With this one, I was in control of my body. That's what it felt like for me. I told Andrew to tell the midwife to come, and Andrew's like, okay, you sure? Like, you know? I'm like, yes, it's happening. I'm gonna decide when I'm giving birth, and you need to get her here because I'm gonna give birth soon. And once she got here, she saw me going through a contraction or a pressure wave, whatever you want to call it, and she saw how intense it was for me. And midwives are so amazing, like experienced, licensed, reputable midwives. She could tell that I was really into it, like that I was really far along, but I did want to get checked because I was super confident this time, where the other two, if you've seen my other birth video, both births when I thought I was really far along, I was actually only like 3 centimeters long, still in the beginning stages of labor, and I couldn't comprehend that because I was in so much pain even in just the beginning. So this time though, oh, and something with Heather, she said, okay, your midwife is on her way, right? And I was like, yeah, my midwife's on my way. She's like, okay, how far along do you want to be when she comes and she checks you? Like, what are you gonna be? I said, I'm gonna be 6 centimeters long. And she said, okay, you're gonna be 6 centimeters long. Tell them, say it in your head. You know it to be true. You're going to be that far along. My midwife got here, I asked her to check me, and she said, how far along do you think you are? Because she knew from my last labor that I was in so much agony for how long it was, and I was never as far along as I thought I was. But she's like this so sweet and supportive, amazing midwife. And so she's smiling at me and she's like, well, what's your guess? How far along do you think you are? And I was like, 6? And she's like, you are 6, almost 7 centimeters. And I just like, I can't even, I mean, I'll cry thinking about this, but it was a really powerful moment for me. And Andrew and I were just laughing and smiling, and it was just such a good moment because I knew I was like about to give birth. Okay, so then I'm just like in the moments of it, it's all just building up and getting stronger and stronger, but it doesn't feel like pain. It just feels like this welcoming and this opening. And I will have to say, I really had to focus on it. Like I really had to put all of my mental energy into telling my body that it feels good and I'm welcoming it and my body is opening, and that all these feelings are just signaling to me that the baby is coming soon. It truly felt good, even when I was so far along about to give birth. Shortly after my midwife had checked me to see how far along I was, she said, yeah, we need to get the other midwives here. So she had doula and the midwife assistant come, and I also told Andrew to call Cadence and tell her to come. And he was like, are you sure you want her to come yet? Because our whole plan was to have her come towards the end, because I didn't really feel the need to have like more people there than necessary when I'm in the midst of labor. But I'm like, yes, trust me, because I could tell, I'm not even kidding you, I could tell that my body wanted to give birth right then, but I was not letting my body give birth until my whole like team was there, until all of my midwives and my birth photographer was there. It sounds so silly, but I really wanted to photograph and document this birth because I didn't do that with the other two. And I felt like my body wanted to give birth, and I was like telling it, you're not going to give birth until they're here. I felt like my body like holding it in, and at that point I was like, wait, why haven't I told these people to come? Like I know I'm ready to give birth, like tell them to come. And I told Andrew, tell me when Cadence, the photographer, gets here, because when she gets here I'm gonna give birth. And I told Andrew this, I said, this is what's gonna happen. You're gonna come in, you're gonna tell me that Cadence is here, and I'm gonna go walk outside and look at the moon and go through a couple contractions there, and then I'm gonna come inside and give birth in the birthing tub. Andrew came in like 10 minutes later, he's like, okay, Cadence is here. I'm like, okay, take me outside, I wanna go look at the moon. So he like took me outside, I looked at it, and I just like almost immediately got down on all fours and I started like ripping the grass with my hands. I went through such a strong pressure that I started moaning at the very depths of my throat, which is what I did with my other two. Like right before I have to push, I sound like a bellowing elephant. It was such a powerful pressure experience, and at that moment Andrew knew. He's like, oh boy, that's the sound, she's about to give birth, like it's happening, she's about to start pushing. So I went through 2 contractions outside, and then he helped me inside, and as soon as I got into the tub I started pushing. She started coming out at such a strong like it hurt. Really hurt, like way worse than my other two, which is so funny because my labor ended up getting like everything I wanted. And I realized in this therapy session we didn't even talk about the pushing. I mean, we did a little bit, but the pushing part really rocked my world with her. And maybe that was because she was bigger. She was almost a whole pound bigger than Elvis and Sandy were. Elvis and Sandy were 8 pounds and 8 pounds 1 ounce, and she was 8 pounds 13 ounces. She's sleeping on the bed over here, by the way. Sleeping to mama talking. So yeah, the pushing was really intense. It took about 20 minutes long, I think. My midwife was right there next to me, helping me to stay calm and help me to breathe through the pushing, to help me not to tear. She's so good at helping women not tear by helping remind me to breathe in and breathe up like this, because it helps the baby come out slower, and that is a lot of reason for tearing if you're pushing instead of like helping it to go really slow. And my eyes were so wide. Andrew said later, he's like, I knew that it hurt you more because I could see it in your eyes. You were like, oh, this hurts so bad. Yeah, it was like definitely a ring of fire, like yeah, okay. But when she did came out, it was amazing.
Also, we had put the kids to bed around 8 p.m. and told them we would wake them up when the baby was coming. They were really excited to see their new baby sibling be born, and we woke them up around 10 p.m. and they got to witness the whole thing, and they absolutely loved it. What do you think, Sandy? Did you like seeing baby Scout be born?
Yeah!
Cord was wrapped around her neck, which my midwife just very easily, okay, hold on, she untwirled the cord around her neck. I pulled her up onto my chest, and actually Sandy had the cord around his neck as well. A lot of people have a misconception about the cord wrapped around the neck. It's super common for a baby to have the cord wrapped around the neck. Certified professional midwives and nurse midwives all are very capable of handling a cord wrapped around the baby's neck. So then I brought her up onto my chest, and I was on such a high. We're like laughing, and if you saw my home birth video, like the actual footage of it, you'll see that we didn't check right away to see if she was a boy or girl, just because I never feel any kind of need to check. Like with any of my 3 kids, I forget to check like all 3 times because I'm just in this huge high of just euphoria, like my baby's here, I'm so happy my baby's here. What's up? Hello, we're talking about you. Hi. And then when we checked to see that she was a girl, that was just like the biggest surprise. I totally thought that it was a boy, just because I figured I had 2 boys already, I just make boys. Either way would have been amazing, but the fact that we did have a girl was just super exciting. And yeah, we were just so ecstatic. It was the most amazing experience. And my labor was 8 hours long. They had said what time it was. They're like, it's 10:32 or something like that. I'm like, it's still the same night. That being said, I just want to say, like, a reminder for anyone watching that no matter what your birth experience is, we are all amazing for whatever the experience was. No one is greater or better for any experience that you've had, whether you had a C-section, whether you had a home birth, whether you had a hospital birth, whether you had a birth without drugs, birth with drugs, like whatever the situation is, we are all warriors no matter what your story is, and we can all be empowered through each other's stories, whether transformative, whether traumatic, whether euphoric, whether painful, whatever it is, we can come together and support each other in our stories, and it has nothing to do with who did it better or anything like that at all, because that's just not what it's about at all. Alright, so that's pretty much my story, and I hope you enjoyed it. I don't think I have anything else to say. But be sure to watch my first video if you have questions on like the specifics about home birthing or midwifery and stuff like that. I will link that in the description box below. And thanks for watching.